Hey folks, and welcome to the Salty Seaman military movie bullshit review of G.I. Joe, the movie, particularly the animated movie from 1987. Childhood favorite of mine. Recently did a poll. This was one of the choices, and it won by a hair over Jarhead, all votes tallied. Just because it was so close. Next one will be Jarhead. I kind of thought I would have won. I didn't think. I was a little blown away how well G.I. Joe did, considering my trends on what type of video, my military bullshits that are more popular. But we will see. But regardless, this is a favorite of mine from childhood. One I've seen not too long ago. My kid was really into G.I. Joe when he was little, about 3 to 5. He's 10 now, and we own this movie on Blu-ray. And we've seen it 2 or 3 times at least. I have, and when he was little kids they'll watch everything forever. But yeah, I've seen this movie at least several times in the last 5 or 6 years. I've never really gone into it looking for military accuracy. It is G.I. Joe. Of course, I've done G.I. Joe episodes here for the funsies of it. And this one kind of stretches, anything remotely resembling anything militaristic. But we will see if there are fun things to hit on here and things that you will enjoy. So in the meantime, let's get to it and get to G.I. Joe, the animated movie. Now, if you're a fan of animation and the process and the art of animation, whether or not you are a fan of G.I. Joe or have any desire to see this movie, I would definitely check out finding a good, clean copy of the intro to this movie. It is absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking, and apparently where most of the plot, or apparently where most of the money for this movie went. Maybe the plot too, I don't know. I'll leave that in. But it is a very, very beautiful work of animation and gung-ho-ness and military and fighting on the Statue of Liberty against terrorists. It's friggin' awesome. And the animation is just gorgeous. The copy I'm using here for review purposes and review purposes only, maybe not be the best quality. So I'd suggest go seeking out at least the intro, like a full, capture version from the Blu-ray or something.
Your leadership has been pompous, pusillanimous, pathetic!
I said this to one of my junior supervisors one time, and he just gave me back a blank look. Guess he was a little too young to remember the movie.
Your Cobra's cast!
Inept!
Insufficient!
Inexcusable!
Unsubstantiated fantasy! Lies! Lies! Lies!
Also, reaction to my last eval. Provides all the reruns of My Wife and Kids you'll ever need. So obviously this is a high secret top mission from the government, creating this BET satellite, I guess, to give reruns to Living Color all around the world. And Cobra just kind of sneaks up on them. Yes, they are there and heavily armed with a lot of ground forces, but is there no any early warning indicators here? Obviously, we're in a bad part of the world. Flight isn't probably strong, but there was no way that they could notice Cobra in any kind of a way. They have this powerful thing that apparently can create energy all across the world, but they have no device to tell them that Cobra is 10 feet away from them. No air support, no nothing. Seems like the Joe's kind of playing this very poorly, and Cobra almost has a right to take him out like this. So here we got the Joe's newest recruits. Again, the Joes are not very good at just sticking to what you think where you would draw special forces from. In this case, we have one real trooper. We have an Army MP, Law and Order. We have a ninja. We have a basketball player. We do have an infantry troop in Tunnel Rat here, another real Army folk, and then we have Chuckles. Who is a undercover kind of CIA spook kind of guy. And he also has no lines in this movie because they ran out of a budget and couldn't afford to pay for a voice actor for him. Tunnel Rat's physical design, by the way, is based on Larry Hama. He is the writer of the G.I. Joe comic and basically invented the 80s G.I. Joe, the version of G.I. Joe from the 80s, Real American Hero. And in tribute, Hasbro created the character of Tunnel Rat, who is, based on his own features. Not to mention Larry Hama was not a tunnel rat, but a minesweeper in Vietnam. How is Beachhead finding out just now Law & Order's a canine unit of Joe? Seems like a weird time for it to come up. Also interesting, the Joes choose to use live ammunition and explosives in their training. Bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Open!
Yes, sir!
And don't call me sir!
That's right. Beachhead is a staff sergeant, and he won't let you forget it. Also, more background on why Jinx likes to fight blind. Check out the comic books where it's more thoroughly explained with the blind master, hard master, soft master, and all the ninja stuff that goes on in the comic that the cartoon doesn't quite cover. And of course, the star of our show, Lieutenant Falcon. Yes, another Army, at least another Army regular, but probably, at least at the beginning, the biggest F up of the new recruits of the Joes, which we'll get into later, and probably one of the more concerning questions about this in terms of military involving Lieutenant Falcon we'll get to in a bit. So we finally see Lieutenant Falcon here, about to make a colossal blunder in any world, particularly the military. But I can't go let his first appearance go without commenting on his fine and dandy ascot. I'm sure that is a general issue for all Army officers. And I know it's G.I. Joe, and, ranks, really don't matter in this show. And I think they do address the actual rank difference here between Duke and Falcon. But at this point, Falcon calls, the first sergeant, Duke, sir. So he does technically outrank him, though, any butter bar or even silver bar would get and deserve this ass chewing from a senior NCO for flagrant violations of the rules if he wouldn't immediately escort him and his girlfriend immediately escorted out of this high level prison with his level of bullshit.
Coordination, mister.
And you're over the line on military protocol. I'm an officer and I'm pulling rank.
Hold it right there!
Finally, some reality in G.I. Joe when it comes to the rank structure. I was right. There was one coming up. Absolutely the correct call by General Hawk here. There's no getting around it. Falcon was an absolute turd, abandoned his posts. They're the reason they even got in the first place is because he brought an unauthorized civilian who was a hidden Cobra in disguise into the base, not to mention firing off weaponry inside the prison, just willy-nilly inside the main control room, which, Duke didn't even say a whole lot about it. I guess that's just kind of normal in the Joe world, but, of course, in real life, he would have immediately been taken off guard duty and stuck in the brig for such stupidity. But no, we got to wait till he loses, the most valuable prisoner in the history of Joe and allows people to get hurt and blah, blah, blah. And of course, it's a movie, so, what would actually happen to Falcon at this point does change. But, the right call by Hawk, a poor call by Duke, I think, even assigning him, any further duty. He should have, just pulled him as a safety hazard after the first part and put someone else in charge. So a nice bit of continuity here, tying back Cobra Law and Globulus and all these people to the creation of Serpentor, which happened in season 2 of Joe, the miniseries Arise, Serpentor, Arise. I really like that they tied that in, that the reason Dr. Mindbender had all those weird, dreams and flashes about how to create Serpentor is explained. I really like that. I assume that was pre-planned. But other questions of continuity here, we see, Pythonia invades the base, the Cobra base, Terradrome, gets through and talks to Serpentor and lets him know, hey, I'm the reason you're here, or we are. Go find this BET. So, okay, that puts Cobra, in the position to find this BET in the I think it's the Himalayas. Cobra attacks, but Cobra getting to Cobra Law, were they manipulating events? Did they just kind of hope Cobra Commander would recognize where he was and try to seek sanctuary with his old people? That whole part of it, it's really, what the actual Cobra Law plans were that ended up where they were. Obviously it worked out for them, but obviously it's part of, movie, just kind of contrivance. And that part always annoyed me. So this is a tribunal, not quite a court martial. It's interesting. I doubt it's very accurate. It doesn't look very accurate. I've never heard of such a thing. If you have, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm just missing it. It's also where we find out Falcon is Duke's half brother, which always kind of bugged me, and I always misremember it because, for some reason in my head I always think he's General Hawk's half brother because Hawk Falcon, I guess. But in the movie, it is indeed Duke's half brother. And again, and I would suppose, if you wanted to get really technical, we usually forgive the Joe uniforms. They're special because they're special forces, but this is a panel of regular military with a lot of out of hair regs. I'm not going to get on the accoutrements. They're weird. Like there's a major with with two hash marks. There's it was like a Navy guy with a beard, which is actually forgivable. Just the time the movie was made. Around the time they're getting rid of beards, I guess. And, small nitpicks in a G.I. Joe cartoon movie, but I thought it was interesting enough to bring up.
I was betrayed! My troops lacked courage! It was not my fault!
Yeah, that's, I've worked for a couple leaders like that. I'm going to say that's not military movie bullshit. G.I. Joe got this one right. So here we get the origin of Cobra Commander and the origin of the organization Cobra, which I think has left a lot of sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. In terms of, comparing it to the other lore, the comic books, again, very different story here. Cobra Commander is very much a normal human who, went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and the great backstory that connects to the original G.I. Joe team, the original 12, the original 13, shows, and we're given, he came to rise in power through, being a great con man and, charismatic leader, even though he's insane. But in the cartoons, we get 2 seasons, essentially, and the miniseries, no such backstory on him, really. But we've never been given any kind of indication he is, from another race of creatures. We are aware his face is disfigured, and this movie does have a good tie back. There's one part where Destro, in one of the very early parts of the Joe cartoon, Destro walks in on Cobra Commander eating without his mask or hood on, and is disgusted, which does tie into where we see here. He is disfigured in Cobra Law from being an otherwise rather handsome blue-skinned man. So yes, there's a tie there. There's and beyond that, there's not a lot of what is Cobra Commander's background before this. There's one bit where he's being interviewed off TV, and he talks about starting a coup at his military school. And there's no reason not to believe, if that story is true, it was a military school in Cobra Law, since he is as they said, a nobleman. But at the same time, this is one of those backstories that people just didn't like, especially if you knew both of them. You're looking at which one is the better backstory. This one that kind of got sprang onto us out of nowhere. Yes, did tie some up loose ends. The creation of Serpentor, where Cobra Commander comes from, and why he's disfigured. and why he's so mysterious. But we didn't like the answers to some of those questions. It was, like I said, comparing it to the comics, absolutely not. And I think people who are just fans of just straight cartoon never liked this one either. In fact, most of them didn't really care for Serpentor at all. And then this definitely was a turkey on top of that. And there's a reason, while Serpentor in later incarnations has somewhat been reclaimed, no one's really trying to recreate Cobra Law in any new version of G.I. Joe.
An itty bitty ditty bag. Got it?
That is just a hilarious delivery from Mr. Bob Remus. Damn you for your stolen valor, Sergeant Slaughter. You're going to lead this team to ruin because you're not an actual Marine. All right, no, I'm kidding. I'm over it. I'm over it. Just still disappointed, Sarge, but let's see what you can do to Mr. Falcon here in kayfabe. Sergeant Slaughter never had that much hair ever in his career that I can even remember going back to the 70s. I'm kind of disturbed that that they have to someone who's recognized as a member of the motor pool / mechanic in Jinx has to hotwire one of their vehicles. Now again, the Joe's apparently once you're a mechanic you can work on all of them, so I'm sure her powers should work like that. But why is she even locked out of it? Wouldn't you want her to be able to not have to hotwire it? Giving her position seems strange. Of course, this is the famous scene where Duke gets put into a coma. If you are, any familiar with the background on this movie, that was not the intended ending for Duke here. Duke is supposed to die. That's how it was written. That's how it went to almost final product. Unfortunately, the year before the theatrical release of the Transformers movie and the death of Optimus Prime, among many other characters, but specifically the beloved leader, taught Hasbro that kids did not want to see their beloved heroes get killed in movies. So the mandate was brought down on Joe. It was like, you can't kill off Duke. So if you go back and if you want to watch this movie and ignore all the seriously injured, he's in a coma, and the very clunky near the end, kind of cheering for some. If you look at all that, knowing that it was originally Elvis was created with the idea Duke was dead, it definitely makes a lot more sense. It's one of the things I definitely remember as a kid is I knew something was off just watching it because I was like, they're being a little too serious for someone being in a coma, which is something that happens in cartoons every 5 seconds. I've seen enough hentai porn to know where this is going. So we get the basic last act of this movie, big action cartoon kind of. It's really hard to judge this fairly on military accuracy because we're getting into we all know I don't sit there and study GI Joe battles and point out how absurd they are. I mean we can kind of we're all grown men. Question there most of this movie is in the the Antarctic. And whether or not some of those helicopter designs that they show would work in the Antarctic, the lack of some of the Joes seem to have taken some kind of weather precautions, others haven't. More than likely, Roadblock would have a severe case of frostbite and hypothermia as he was wandering around in the short sleeves in Antarctica with nothing but a snake. I guess we can just let Cobra Commander kind of slide as being a magical snake man. For those of you who don't know anything regarding what happened in this plot line later, Cobra Commander recovers in the second version of the G.I. Joe cartoon, which would pick up with a different company than produced the first one. The first one was Sunbow. The second one was DIC, D-I-C. Ends up doing the second one, not as well regarded. It got really, really cartoony. And of course, as I think I've mentioned earlier, this whole Cobra Law plotline was never well regarded by the fandom and has basically never been revisited. Misstep, pretty much something they wanted to forget as soon as they did it. I feel, they didn't even make toys for all. I mean, this was supposed to be a big rollout like Transformers the movie. But that one kind of flopped at the box office, which a lot of people might know because it's so beloved as a childhood favorite now. But yeah, it was a bomb. They also did a My Little Pony movie, which was also a bomb. So it was chosen to make this movie go straight to home video. And, there was a very limited run on some of the new stuff that came out in the movie. And some stuff never got anything. I think Big Lob ended up finally getting a figure. It was a convention exclusive about 10 years ago. Before that, there was no Big Lob. Chuckles and Tunnel Rat were in the regular line. They were easy to find. Falcon was too. Jinx, I believe. The Cobra Law guys are, I believe, really difficult to find. My friend had them, and there was, I knew one person, so it was a flop. I think the biggest military takeaway I would have in the whole thing is, comparing the world of G.I. Joe to ours, would all be forgiven with Falcon, considering what he did. I think in our world, no, just because, he went through a week of boot camp and then, did really well on a follow-up mission that he was only on due to extreme circumstances. I think some could be forgiven. I think you could commute. I don't think any tribunal would overstep probably a court martial in that case. Somebody would demand it's too big of a crime. At the very least, he's not. He is losing his clearance to be a Joe. His only connection to them would probably be as their admin clerk on their unclass side. So overall, fun memory from childhood. It's still fun to watch. A little ridiculous trying to do it from a military realism perspective, but I think I had a little fun with this, and I hope you guys did too. That's it for the Salty Seaman. Next time I see you on doing a movie, it will most likely be Jarhead. Catch y'all freaks later. Peace.